Ah,
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
okay, thanks, Lou. Yeah, so as I said, those are our ground rules. On mute, questions through the chat, and then we'll have time for Q&As. Right, so first of all, a little bit about the foundation, as some of you haven't applied to us. The Heart of England Community Foundation, we're a charity. That's a really important thing to know. We're a charity in our own right, and we raise money to fund and develop community activity. And our patch, our geographical area, is right across the West Midlands and Warwickshire. Community foundations were sort of set up, firstly in America about 25 years ago, and it was to try and develop philanthropy in communities. And it was thought that while you had lots of individual trusts and foundations, wealthy families, you know, people like the Cadburys, the Sainsburys, there was no real grassroots philanthropy going on. And what they wanted to encourage were donors in communities, so it may be organisations, to actually have a conduit, a proper conduit, with an organisation that knew local communities, small organisations, so they could send the money they had through them to make sure that it was really making a difference in the community. Now, we have been, as I said, doing this for about 25 years, and we distribute something like, I think it's about £2 or £3 million a year. And we do this, we get that money from lots of different ways. First of all, as a community foundation, we have our own endowment. So we have a sum of money, originally some of it came from the government, and we raised from other sources, which stands at about £12 million. And that gives us, it's probably about £4,000, £500,000 a year that we can distribute solely from the interest that we get on that. The other thing that we do is that we look then for other donors. We look for corporate donors and we work with those. We're probably working with 10 or 12 across the Midlands at the moment. And for instance, Wesleyan Foundation is one of our largest donors. And in a year, they will actually give us around about £1 million to distribute on their behalf. That's not just in the Midlands, actually. Some of that goes to other parts of the country, but we run several programs for Wesleyan Foundation. We also run programs for other funders. Made by Sport is a good example. And we run both national programs. So we've run programs for DCMS, the Home Office, and we run regional programs. So at the moment, I think we've got 3 or 4 programs we're running for local councils. So we have all of the time money coming into us from different sources, but it's all about donors who want to make a difference and see us as the best people to send that money through to make sure it does, having the contacts in the community and the expertise to distribute the grants fairly. So what that means is that we have very many programs running, usually at one time. At the moment, I think we're up to about 16, and we're constantly, you know, throughout the year, 5-6 times a year easily, we'll be launching new programs. So the first thing is we're not somebody who just has one program, although we are looking to see if we can rationalize a bit. So what you need to be doing is to make sure that you've signed up when you go onto our website, that you sign up so you receive information from us regularly, because we will always be launching new programs and for lots and lots of different sorts of activity. We really do sort of run from A to Z in terms of community activity. Okay, now a bit about our basic requirements. Okay, I think the sort of things that we ask you to provide for us as the norm, if you like, is exactly what you would expect to see from most funders. So we ask that you have a constitution. We don't ask that you're a charity or a CIO or a KIC in particular, but you must have a set of rules that you observe. We are happy to fund KICs. The only thing is that we If you're a company that's limited by guarantee, that's absolutely fine. But if you're a company limited by shares, that can sometimes be a bit difficult depending on the way that you set yourself up. So if you're a company limited by shares, I'd always advise you to get in touch with us and discuss your situation before you make an application. You can be a local branch of a national organisation, but you need to be able to manage your own finances. You need to have control of your own bank account. You need to provide us with a full set of financial accounts, and you can apply if you're a new organisation, and we'll ask you to provide a 12-month forecast. And if you're an organisation that's not a year old, 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, whatever, then we'll usually ask you to do a hybrid of what you've done so far and what you're expecting to do, you know, in your first 12 months of existence. We'll ask to see a bank statement from you in your name and covering the last 3 months of activity with an account number and short code. You'll need to have at least 3 unrelated members on your board or your committee. And we do ask for names and residential addresses, so we can check that. And we ask for some policies, the minimum that we think you need to have as an organisation, so in terms of good practice. So the policies we'll ask for at the moment, and we'd be asking for, I think under this programme, are that you have an equality policy and that you have a safeguarding policy for vulnerable adults, children, both depending exactly what it is that your group do. And if you go to our website, you'll see that we have some information on there to tell you the sort of things that we'll be looking for when we're looking at your policies. Okay, any questions so far? No, that's all quite straightforward, I think. Right, so now we're going to talk about the Made by Sports programme in particular. So, Lou, can I go over to you?
Yeah. As Liz has said, all of our current available grants are on our website, which Liz showed earlier. The presentation's gone, Liz.
All right, yeah, that's me.
That's my little script, you say, so I need the presentation.
There you go.
There we go, yeah. But particularly today, we're talking about the Made by Sports. So the main focus will be around that particular fund today. So these are just the snapshots really of Made by Sport in terms of the headlines really as to what you need or have in place to be eligible to apply for Made by Sport. So there's grants available up to £2,021. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know whether it's because it's 2021 and it's something quite quirky. They've never really sort of explained that, but £2,021 is the maximum grant. It's aimed at clubs and organisations using sport to deliver social outcomes. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. The fund is for clubs and organisations working with children and young people 5 to 25 years. And that you can only be working with them, not working with adults. But this fund is aimed at that age range. And again, I'll talk about that a little more when we look at the fact sheet shortly. It was the whole of our patch, so the whole of West Midlands and Warwickshire. And as an organisation, you must have an annual income of less than £75,000 a year. We appreciate that that's quite low for some organisations. However, Made by Sports were keen to reach the more grassroots organisations. They've set that figure of 75,000 as your maximum annual income. I'm going to be looking shortly at the fund fact sheet for Made by Sports. I'm going to try and get the application form up on the screen, so wish me luck with that, so we can have a little look at some of the questions that they ask. And then I'm doing most of the assessing on the applications we've received so far, so we'll be giving you a little bit of feedback from the received applications to date, purely to give you some feedback on, you know, why they were rejected, for example. I've just noticed, Dan, you've got the hand raised.
Yes, Jan.
Yeah. Yes, my question was about the minimum, the maximum annual income. Is that your normal revenue funding, or does it include one-off grants that you might have received in the last year? Because we had some unusual one-off grants, but our regular annual income is way below 75,000, but our last accounts are above 75,000. So would they let you look at our typical annual income, say over the last 5 years, and say 2021 was, you know, unusual because we got some COVID grants and things, but that was an unusual situation, and
Yeah.
they were. I suppose my question is there a difference between your unrestricted income, which is like your normal income, and then your restricted income, which is from, you know, grants, like we got 10,000 from Heart of England, you know, would that count? How do they interpret your income?
They interpret it from your last annual account, so it would include grants and things, you know, like you've just said about the £10,000. It is a question that I can take back to them, because if you've had specific large grants just for a particular project, for example, that's the question. But my feeling is it would be based on last year's accounts, even though they may not be of your usual income, which is a bit frustrating, I appreciate.
Because our last year's is a real, it's lovely, but it's a real aberration of our typical income. So if you were thinking, sorry guys, I'm just going to push this point because otherwise it means it's worth or not worth me staying. If they wanted to target, you know, small sports clubs like ours, then we would tick all their boxes. But last year's accounts would make us look like we'd had, you know, got a lot of money in, but that hasn't changed the nature of the club. So it may be that if you've got a relationship with them, you can say, look, we've looked at their last 5 years of accounts, and 4 out of their 5 years they tick this box. Would you still consider them? They might, you know, if they're small funders that, you know, that want to know people, you know, that are happy to have that intermediate conversation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a question.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think take that back. I think the question has been raised before with them, but we can certainly take it back to them.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to stay though, Jan, because if you do have to apply in the future, you know, if we come back and say yes, it's okay, hopefully you'll get something out of the session.
Before I kind of put pen to paper, it would be possible for you to ask that question, and if they say give it a go, then it's fine us applying. But if they say we'll just automatically rule them out, then there's no point us, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, no worries. Was there any other questions about the highlights of Made by Sport before I go on to look at the fun fact sheet? No? Okay, right. Let me see if I can share the fun fact sheet with you. Bear with me a second. Need to unshare the presentation. Right, are people able to see the fun fact sheet? Yeah? Yeah. It's a good start. It's always the technology that lets me down. Right, okay. I think we wanted to go through the fun fact sheet. As I say, I've been doing most of the assessing of Made by Sport that we've had since we launched the programme. And unfortunately, I will talk about the rejects that I've had, and a lot are based on not meeting criteria. So although if you look now, I'm scrolling through it quickly, you can see it's quite long. It is important to look at it, because those of you who have applied before for funding from ourselves or somebody else, you know, it's a long slog really. It's hard work. You need to put in a lot of information for me to read it in 5 minutes and reject it based on a criteria issue. So I just wanted to go through this one because it is very different to our usual programme. So people who have applied before would know that a lot of our programmes allow a turnover of £250,000 and above. So I thought, well, we're in that range, but for this programme it is £75,000 is the maximum income you can have. So rejected more or less straight away, really. So to look at the fun fact sheet, I'll just point out some things, but I just wanted us to look at it together in case it prompts any questions from you this morning. As I said in the previous slide, it's for organisations that are promoting sport primarily for young people aged 5 to 25 years. as I said earlier, that doesn't have to be your main business. You can, or it does have to be your main business in this context, but it doesn't mean that you can only work with children. But if you were to apply for this, you would need to be evidencing that this particular project is only for this age range. As you can see in the line underneath, priority must be for those organisations that have less than 10% of their membership outside the age range. On the application form, which we'll look at in a second, it does ask how many members you've got 5 to 25 and how many members you've got 26 and over, so sort of your adult range. And we do have to evidence that if you've got more than 10% adults or over the 10%, you could be a less priority than those who are, you know, under the 10%. All of their main members are aged 5 to 25. The purpose of the fund, again, it's to use sport for social outcomes, so not sport in a competitive sense, although it can be competitive. It's not the main drive of the fund. So it's engaging children and young people in activities to address some of these, or one or more of these particular outcomes. So that's developing life skills, improving mental health, reducing crime and antisocial behaviour, developing employability skills, and building stronger communities. Now we could know that even competitive sport might address some of these. You know, it's improving mental health, for example, just by being physical. You need to evidence that your main drive to engage children and young people in physical activity or sport is because you want to improve their mental health or want to reduce crime and antisocial behaviour. Available funding, as I said, is £2,021. The funds need to be spent by November 2021, so we're now May. So you'll be looking, if you were looking at a specific project, a maximum of 6-month project, because the funds need to be spent by that date. Some of the things that they'll fund here, so direct project costs, staff costs, volunteer expenses, transport, and appropriately apportioned core costs, so a contribution to your core cost from this project in particular. Covers our main areas, as I've said. So when it comes to your annual income, again, it's up to £75,000 is the maximum. However, within that as well, they have added additional priorities. So the highest priority will be under £25,000 a year. So if funds are limited, those in that income bracket would take priority over those, you know, that have got an income of 74,000, for example. Again, as Liz has mentioned earlier, you need to be constituted in some way, so a charity, constituted group, CIC, social enterprise, etc. I don't want to go through the whole fact sheet with you. I just wanted to point out some of the particular things. Here, again, as Liz mentioned earlier, you will have to submit some supporting paperwork. If you're looking for capital items, you know, pieces of equipment, for example, that are over £300, you will have to provide quotations for those as well. And you will have to do some end of grant monitoring paperwork, which is quite normal anyway for any grant that you may be allocated from any funder. Right at the bottom, there's the Appendix 1. You know, some people have said, well, what's the difference between sport for development from community sport? Again, I'm not going to go through all of this. It gives you some clear indications for each of the outcomes of the kind of things that they will be looking for in your application, or we will be looking when we're assessing your application. So again, as I say, it is quite a long document, but please read it, because it's going to say, you know, if you can spend half an hour reading this, it will save you 3, 4, 5 hours of completing an application form that can be rejected straight away. Before I move on to the application form, has anybody got any questions about the fact sheet? It can be found on our website under our available grants, and if you go on to the Made by Sport icon, so to speak, you hover over that, it says, please read our fund fact sheet before applying, or something like that. And if you click on that, that will bring you to this document that I'm sharing with you now. There's somebody waiting in the waiting room, so let me admit those. Okay, I can't see any hands up or anybody burning to ask any questions, but if I can say, please read the fact sheet. Although it looks quite long, a lot of it's bullet pointed, it will certainly help you in getting your application over the first hurdle of me rejecting as soon as I've read it the first time, unfortunately. Okay. Right, I'm going to now try and share.
Everything they do is awesome.
Right, if you bear with me a second. Right, can we see this one now? It's a form. Yeah, thank you. Has anybody started an application yet? Or requested a link? Has anybody seen this before? I don't want to go through it if you've seen it all before. Okay. So this is the live document, so I'm not going to be clicking on anything or changing anything. Scared that I'll do some damage to it. So well, you know, we can go through it. This is the online form that you will see when you request a link and want to apply for Made by Sport. So those of you who applied to us before will see that it's very similar to our usual application forms, but obviously does ask very different questions to our usual programmes. Again, I'm not going to go through all of the form, but looking at some of it, you know, it's going to ask for your organisation details, your details as the main contact person, what type of organisation you are. If you're affiliated to a national body, please tell us which one. Here's the question now about how many young people aged 25 to 25 are members of your club, and how many are adults. And I'm assessing your income, and this question here will probably be one of the first things that I might look at, because if you're how many children and young people, you've got 10 and your adults are 100, it'll be a reject, because your majority of your membership is out of the range for the programme, which is age 5 to 25. There's a slight difference. I'll do a calculation as to what the percentage is, you know, and it might be that you know, it works out that there's sort of 25% are adults over the young people, and I'll put that in the assessment, so it may lower the priority for you, because as I've said, their priority is for 10%, so they want people who mainly work with children and young people. There is some stability in that, in the sense that we've raised that with Made by Sport, is that we appreciate that people do work with over 26-year-olds and do work with 5 to 25-year-olds. If you would need to evidence within your application, although your membership for adults is slightly higher than we would like it to be, this particular project is ring-fenced for age 5 to 25. So none of the adults will benefit from this fund, but you would need to evidence that within your application. And I think you raised your hand a second ago.
Yeah, thanks again. Because we're a sailing club, which is, you know, and you can't have a sailing club just for children. It just wouldn't be economically viable, you know, with all the costs and things like that. And the children's membership is like minuscule compared to the adult members, you know, fees and things. But the project which we want to develop is some stuff we've piloted with Birmingham Children's Hospital. So that is a really specific target group, and also we wouldn't have volunteers if we didn't have adult members. We wouldn't have adult volunteers to run things, you know, with young people. So it's a kind of, you know, when you explain that, it's kind of like obviously logical, but it's again, you know, so if you looked at our percentage, we would be definitely more than 10% of our member, you know, it's more, we've got more adult members than children, but this project we want to do is just for children.
Yeah, that'd be okay. You just have to really evidence that within your application, that every penny of what you're requesting will be for benefiting the age range that the fund is for 5 to 25-year-olds.
As long as it's, you know, as long as it's like a real person, like you reading it and going, oh yes, you know, it's not a kind of a, you know, a computer sift that just chucks it out without anyone reading.
It will be me reading it, or Penny or Liz, you know, one of my other colleagues. But, yeah,
Okay.
a real person, yeah.
Thank you.
New stage, yeah.
I think it's fair to say, Lou, that Made by Sport have been quite prescriptive in how they wanted this programme to look and who it's aimed at. It's not an approach that we've taken before, that having those layers of rules. And one, yes, we are looking at it humanly, but also we are constantly going back to them where we think that things may not necessarily be having the effect that they intended, and bringing this up with them. So anything you see as you're going through this, it's really useful if you say that's not going to work because, or you know, that's going to have the opposite effect that they intend, and we can take that sort of stuff back to them and say, on the ground, this is the response we're getting. It's really helpful for us.
Yeah, because I don't think, you know, I've been around, you know, water sports organisations for a while in Birmingham, and I know lots of other sailing clubs around the country and things, and you don't have water sports organisations just for children because of all the, you know, the health and safety issues around water sports and all the equipment you need and all the safety equipment and everything like that to just run water sports. I can't think of anybody who is just a youth water sports organisation. There's lots of ones that do things for young people, but you know, by the nature of it, it just it's not how water sports for young people is really set up. So you know, I can imagine that there are people who just run a, you know, children's football team, you know, and has got no association with an adults football team, but football's different to water sports, and it may be that the funders haven't thought about some of those other sports. I suppose that's what I'm just saying without trying to be too critical.
No, I think you're right. I think.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry.
Go on, Liz. Go on, Liz.
I think what they're also trying to ensure is that the emphasis is on the outcomes and using sport as a tool to effect change, social change, and that's maybe, I don't know what's a driver for some of these. We have got a question on the chat actually from Phoebe. What if the group does not have a membership?
I don't think every group has memberships as such, do they? In terms of people signing up, I think it would still look at roughly how many people attend your activity, because not everybody signs you up as a member in necessarily, but they still know that the majority of the attendance at their club or organisation is roughly about 100 children and 25 adults, for example. So I think the word membership, like Lisa said, we've had no control over the form really. You know, we did try and provide some feedback because the way that some of the questions are worded, can we just tweak it slightly? And unfortunately, they've wanted it this way, you know. So we maybe wouldn't have used the word membership to alleviate the question, Phoebe, that you've just asked, really, because not everybody does have members. So when you're talking to people you might be supporting to apply for applications, try and explain that bit to them, that, you know, not everybody signs up as members, but they know roughly how many kids come and how many adults come. And
I'd also cover that off in one of the questions as well, when you know, as some narrative in there say, when we say members, we mean people that are coming and, you know, taking part in our activities.
I think is membership a language that sports clubs use? So maybe that's because that's their main bag, really. Sport is, you know, is what they use, whereas we know as a voluntary and community sector, it's not language that we use all the while. But just going back to this age range, initially the flexibility was non-existent. You know, it was 10% or nothing. So we've, like Liz has said, have raised it nationally because this is a national programme. So the community foundations are working, delivering this as well, that they've gone back with questions similar to ours. So we know that it's not just sort of our issue. It's been a national issue with some of the information, that the flexibility, that if you can evidence that this money is going to make a difference to 5 to 25-year-olds, they're okay with that. initially they weren't. We are trying to, and like Liz said, if you've got comments and feedback when we get to the question and or now, we'll absolutely make notes and feed them back, like your question, Jan, about the income. And we did all right last year, but previous years we don't do so well financially. So it's all good, to ask the questions and we can take them back. Right, the outcomes, again, this is a drop down box. It will list the outcomes that are in the fact sheet. So developing life skills, improving mental health, exam, etc. You will have to sort of tick which one you think your project will meet. Some people meet more than one. I think you can only put one, but within the main bulk of your application, you can evidence that actually, although our main emphasis is developing life skills, we will be improving mental health and reducing crime and antisocial behaviour as part of the programme as well. Any groups that you might work with that are traditionally underrepresented in sport, and they've given some examples there, and for you to sort of fill that in. The red boxes, the ones with red on are sort of mandatory. You can't submit your form if you haven't completed all of those. We do like to see the others completed as well, but the mandatory ones will absolutely prevent you from clicking submit. There'll always be an error. If you get an error, it does highlight where the error is, that you've missed this box or that box, which is a little bit helpful, I think. A bit frustrating if you don't know what you're missing, so the system does sort of point out for you. Again, what is the annual income of your club? You need to answer that question there. Then they ask as well about where you get the majority of it from. So, people might say 100% of our income comes from grants, or 75% comes from grants, and 25% comes from other, people might say donations in that box there. What's your projected expenditure for the coming year? And just an idea of how much you'll be spending next year. This question, the next question, is about safeguarding, and the question after that is about equal opportunities. As you can see, there's up to 500 words in there as to what your approach is to safeguarding. As it says, what are your safeguarding risks and how will you measure, what measures do you put in place to reduce them? So again, when I've been assessing this, people will say, we review our safeguarding policy every 12 months. We do regular risk assessments, that kind of thing. If you do say that, make sure that your policy is reviewed and up to date, because you do have to submit that as well. But in this text here, I have seen a really robust approach to safeguarding, and the safeguarding policy, unfortunately, hasn't been reviewed for 3 years, even though here they've said they do it every year. So, we do look at the documents and sort of interrogate what you've sent, really. So make sure that they correlate with what you're putting in these boxes.
Actually, it might be helpful, Lou. Sorry.
Yeah.
It might be helpful, Lou, to say that when we're doing any assessment, essentially it's split into 2 parts. And the first part is due diligence on you as an organisation. And then the second is essentially looking at the project and what you want to do. So that's when we look at your accounts, see if you're financially viable, but we'll look in great detail at your policies. And although it's highly unusual to refuse somebody a grant because they don't come out very well when we're checking all of the policies and everything else, it is something that always gets mentioned and brought to the panel. So if you haven't reviewed your policies, the panel will know that you haven't done that. And if they're looking, because it's all a competitive process, if they're looking at a few applications together and they're all equally worthy, but one, internally isn't as well structured as the other, its safeguarding policy may not be as strong, hasn't been reviewed, whatever else, then it's more likely that the other will be funded instead of you. So it's really important that, if you have these policies, then you do make sure that they're regularly reviewed and that they're as good as they can be, that you've taken account of best practice and legally what you should have in them. As I said, we do have information on our website that's a bit of a template, but there's also lots and lots of other sources of advice and information out there. But it's really important. It isn't that we ask for them and then nothing happens. We do look at them really closely.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, particularly with this programme having the low income, looking at the income on the box, you know, people will say up to 50,000 and submit maybe an Excel spreadsheet, which includes some information of the last 12 months, just for a specific project that is below 50,000. If you're a registered charity or a company, you know, a company limited by guarantee or a CIC, for example, we do also look on Charity Commission and Companies House, where accounts are public, you know, we can look at those, and their actual income was 372,000, you know, so they've sort of, not saying they've lied, you know, but they think that this particular project that we're working on only has a small income, but the organisation as a whole is over the threshold, unfortunately. So we do, like Lee said, we do look in detail at the due diligence and your governance and your as an organisation are running, really. But in terms of the questions, I think it's good that they're asking these questions around the safeguarding and equal ops, because they want to fund projects that are delivering safe practice for children and young people. Sorry, Liz, did you want to say?
Yeah, the other thing that we've used a lot, and it started really when the pandemic hit, so we weren't able to get out to see people, is if you've got social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and we ask for details of those in the forms. We will go and look at those and see what's on there and see what's on your website, so we can see how active you are. And the activities that you tell us that you're doing, are they reflected in your website? I mean, I have seen websites that are still actually under construction, as well as social media accounts that haven't been looked at. No, there doesn't seem to have anybody following them, no likes, there's no footprint. And it's getting to be a really important part of the checking that we do, a good guide for us. As I say, it started because we couldn't see people, so we had to have a way of knowing that they were there and serving the community.
Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, scrolling through again, bank details along with your bank accounts, bank statement rather. We do ask for the information for your bank, so we can just correlate the two together again. The organisation size here, this is a drop down. It'll say up to 25, up to 50, up to 75 in that box there, which will give an indication of, you know, the priorities that I mentioned earlier. Provide an age range of the young people that you work with. So although it's 5 to 25 is their category for Made by Sport, yours might be 5 to 15, for example. The region that you're based in, again, this is a drop down, so it'll cover most of the areas or all of the areas that we are covering with this grant. Organisational aims, this is where you could sort of say the stuff that you've already done to contribute towards social outcomes, so past projects that you've run. It says here about writing a short case study or similar. Obviously anonymise that, we don't want to see sort of the names of children and young people, but the difference that your project has made to a particular individual looking at any of these outcomes, really. We've got 500 words there, so you know it is a good chunk of the application. The Made by Sport obviously want to know of your previous experience of delivering sport for social outcomes, really. So this is a first part of your application to sell your project as a whole, or your organisation as a whole, that you do meet the criteria that we've done this sort of stuff before. Next question is quite similar to that, really. Tell us about your organisation's experience of helping people and the impact of your previous work. You know, some of the projects that you may have put on. As I've said earlier, we've had no control over the form, and unfortunately some of it does what's the word, replicate, you know, sort of putting similar things in the same boxes, really. But this box particularly does ask about impact. It could be feedback from previous participants, whether that's, you know, the one individual that you've mentioned there, or a collection, really. We'd like to see it from more than one person, and the difference that it's made. They're also asking about the people that are involved in your project and why you're confident you've got the ability to make the project succeed. So that could be that you've got, you know, certain skills, you've worked with young people for, an X amount of years, you've got sort of experience of working with the police to reduce, so it's sort of selling your organisation that it's going to be successful because we've done this before and we've got all these skills and experience to make sure that will make a difference to the people involved. So look at my notes here. This section here where it says, please provide information on the project you are applying for. Because Made by Sport will fund money just for sustainability, some of the applications I've seen here, it can be 2 or 3 sentences that we want money to enable the club to continue following the pandemic and losing a lot of revenue from fundraising and membership or subs, for example. What we need to see in there really is a little bit more as, okay, sustainability, but this will enable your club to continue to deliver XYZ for children and young people. So the under 6 football club element of our project won't continue if we can't sustain the project. The 15 and over boxing session won't be able to continue without this additional fund. So although it's about sustainability of the whole club, there's certain elements within that that are for children and young people that just wouldn't happen if the organisation folded. And it's important to evidence in this bit that it is, if your organisation works with any age range, this is the part to sell. This is particularly ring fenced for this element of 5 to 25-year-old activity that we deliver. Makes sense, that question, because that's the weakest area that I've seen in terms of applications that we've received so far, and I have to go back to the organisation and really dig a bit deeper to get more information. Just have I explained that? Do people understand how I've just explained that? I think I do in my head, but yeah, I can't see any hands or comments. Does anybody want to say anything? No?
I think really just to emphasise what you've said there, Lou, that's probably the most important bit that we look at, the project purpose and that and the outcomes,
Yeah.
the things that are absolutely crucial. So, further up, it was about the aims and selling your organisation and really letting us know what you do and why you're so important to the community. But here it's about having some clarity over what you're going to spend the money on. And the good thing about this programme is actually that they are happy with you spending it on almost anything, Lou. That's fair, isn't it? The idea is you decide what you need to do, you're meeting those outcomes, and then you do what you want with the money. So it isn't like some programs where we have to be very, very strict about the budget and what's in and what's out and what we can fund and can't fund. This is much more open than that, but you have to be clear in that section and show us why you need it.
Yeah, I mean, the next section down, as Lisa said, is about the outcomes. So the difference that your project will make to children and young people, particularly focusing on one of these outcomes. These are the outcomes that they've set. So your project must address one or more of those outcomes. And this, again, is up to 500 words. So it's quite a lot. I'm not saying that you have to write 500 words. If you can do it shorter than that, but get the point across, you can do that. But it needs to make this box here needs to make sure that you've evidenced the difference your project's going to make to children and young people looking at one of or more of those 5 outcomes. How much are you applying for is quite straightforward. And if successful, how do you anticipate you'll spend the funds? So again, people are putting in their staff costs, as it says here, volunteer expenses, core costs. What we need in there is a breakdown. And like Lisa said, they're quite happy for you to spend the money on anything, but a rough idea that what if you're looking at sustainability, for example, it isn't necessarily ring fenced for what you'll put in this box. But from the panel's point of view, they do like to see that if it's staff costs, it'll be 10 hours of one member of staff, 5 hours of another member of staff to contribute towards the under 15s football club for the next 6 months. So a little bit of a budget breakdown in there is useful. Again, if it's not included, I will drop you an email to request that information. How many under 25 to 25s are going to take part? Right, primary beneficiaries, again, this is a drop down. So when you click that drop down, there's a list of different beneficiary groups. So we'd want you to pick one of those. It's probably most likely to be children and young people, given the nature of.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course you can.
Hey, sorry, I come into this pretty late.
That's all right.
Just a quickie. Is it yourselves that are on the panel?
No.
Or you just giving a ballpark view of what to put down on the...
Yeah, myself and Liz are grants officers. So we did a little bit before you joined. So just to recap on that, when you applied, no worries. When you applied to Heart of England, myself, Liz, or Jenny, our colleague, assess your application and check all your supporting paperwork, write an assessment of that, pointing out the key highlights within your application or any weaknesses, and then it goes to the panel. So it'll be myself, Liz or Jenny that will drop you an email and say, you know, could you give us a little bit more information about your project? It's not clear enough, or there's a few gaps. Your outcomes, how often will the sessions run? What sort of questions that we'll ask you. But when it goes to the panel, they've hopefully got a good clear idea of what you want the money for, etc. So no, we don't make any decisions. We can make recommendations, but it's up to the panel.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, super.
All right.
That's brilliant.
Some funders have one person assessing, whereas we've got a group of people, which I think is quite good. You know, there's I think there's eight people on the panel and all bring different broader
minds.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's good. So yeah, we do the assessment, and then it would go to a panel who make the decision. We don't make the decision, unfortunately.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Cheers.
Again, they're asking about match funding in this one, that if you're going to use it to contribute to a larger grant. Here, there's about sustainability again. So, you know, is it going to be used to strengthen or ensure the sustainability of your organisation, and describe it below. Again, you can put sort of a little bit more about what you might spend the money on there, as well as in here, or one or the other. Like I say, there is some duplication in the form. And the supporting documents there that we've said earlier that you will need to submit with your application. We do have some people that have difficulty uploading sometimes, so if you're struggling to get a certain document attached, you can always, you know, contact us to help you, you know, talk you through that, or submit it, but then one of us will have to contact you anyway, because we can't begin an assessment seeing all of your paperwork. That is a snapshot of the application form, but myself and Liz thought it would be useful for people to see it, because, as I say, if you've applied to us before, some of the questions on this form are very different and worded very differently, and ask for different information from our other programmes. So I hope it was useful. I appreciate it's a lot of information and information overload on there, but as I say, we are recording this, so it will be uploaded on our website, so you can go back and have a look.
Oh, good.
If I've talked through it too quickly for you to get, but I'm just conscious of the time as well. So, is there any questions about the application form?
Is there any chance you could send me the link?
To the application form?
If you don't mind.
We can't do that, unfortunately, because it is a live document. It comes through our website, so that's why I'm not clicking on anything, because I don't want to damage it, because it's actually, this is live. When you request a link on our website, this comes through the website. Right. It's sort of an internal document almost, if that makes sense, that I'm looking at now.
Yeah.
But it's the same as what you would look at if you applied. So hopefully, if you're able to link, or when it's on our website, we'll let people know that you can go and have a look at that to revisit it maybe, and scribble down some of the questions. By pausing it or something.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah, it's something that we're looking at Liz, isn't it, really, to give people an idea of what the application might ask in terms of our revamping of things, because a lot of people want to know particularly because it's online, we get people panicked that if they leave it, they're going to lose it all. So some people like to put it on a Word document first and then copy it in a live version. So yes, we appreciate that it's I think once you start doing it online, you do get people panicking that they've lost it. So we can look on the system and say, no, you haven't, you have saved it, it is there. But it can get a bit of anxiety. But so hopefully once we're finished and it's up on our website, you can revisit it then to have a look, to go through and have a look at the questions. You know, because we can't send a link, it's an internal link. So okay. Right, so no more questions about the application form? No, I can't see any hands. Right, okay. Just one of the things that I wanted to just feedback in terms of the applications that we've received to date. Wanted to just give you some stats really, having looked at the fund fact sheet and had a look at the application form. 53% of the assessed applications that we've received to date that have been assessed. So we might have had some that, you know, so if you've applied, you know, we might not have got to your application yet, but all the ones that have been assessed, 53% have been rejected by me because they don't meet certain criteria. So that's upsetting because I know the work that they've put into the application. So it's a little bit frustrating, isn't it, Liz? Because we know that if you had to have read the fact sheet, you'd have got the hours of your life back of not having to complete the form. 53%, 46% were over the annual income. And again, I've mentioned, if people have applied to us before, they sort of know we're around 250,000. We're below that, you know, we're fine. But for this one being 75% maximum income, it does unfortunately trip people up. 46% of applications. 18% weren't sport or physical activity. Another 18% were ineligible. So when we're looking at our basic criteria, the people that were rejected for ineligibility were primarily because they'd only got one director. They hadn't got at least 3 unrelated members on their management committee. 9% were geography. So I think we had a few applications from Staffordshire. As I've said, this is a national programme. So when I've rejected that, I've encouraged them to apply or contact their local community foundation to see if they can apply to them. And we had a few that adult majority, so they got mostly adults and only a few children as membership. It was 9% as well. So you can see that 53% were rejected based on, my gut feeling is not having a look at the fact sheet first, and it is frustrating for us because we know the amount of effort people have put in. That had you spent half an hour with a couple having a quick flick through that, it would have prevented a reject. And I know how it feels to get a reject from, you know, a funder. For you guys to receive that reject email is quite upsetting after the work that you've put in. So read the fact sheet if I can say anything particularly about the Made by Sport, because like Lisa said, they're very strict on the criteria. There's, you know, if it's one of our programs, you can have a chat with us, and we sometimes we can offer a bit of flexibility. Unfortunately with this, they are very strict on their criteria. So you know, they are rejected. Let's say 53%. I don't think there's anything else, unless anybody had got any questions, particularly.
Yeah, good to go.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yes, sorry. So what it is with myself, we set up a mini kickers probably about around about 3-4 years ago. Started with 4 kids, but now we get like 40 kids on a Saturday morning. And it's running itself, it's paying for the AstroTurf, it's paying for a bit of the kit, but we would like to get more of a kit, but I've never made it into a CIC, which I'm just about to do now. Once I do that, which is in the motions now, I'm just filling out the forms and sending them off. Do I then just come to you and fill out this form? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think
you don't need to be a kick. Have you got a set of rules? Have you got a governing document?
Yeah. So I had to have a governing document from the FA.
But Yes, you mean based on one the FA used?
Yeah. So we've got to adhere to what the FA say, basically.
And have you got a committee? You run by a committee?
No, we're not run by committee. We fall under. We do fall under a football club called. We affiliated with Sheldon Roars Football Club.
It's probably something. It'd be best to have a chat with us.
I was going to say, yeah.
Because you missed the beginning, but we said that we can't. It's not the forum to talk about individual applications.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. It's okay. But if you want to just send an email to us, we've got an info line. I'll get the address on screen for you in a minute, and just say that you'd like to chat to a grants officer about an application, and somebody will get in touch with you.
Super, thank you.
Okay, and then we can explain all the technical bits to you.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. Jan, I think you wanted to. You're on mute. You're on mute, Jan.
Still all right. I'm trying to behave so properly, and then it's quite difficult to unmute yourself. Just a question about timescales, and if you have, what the deadlines may be, and how often your panel is to get something in, for a particular panel.
Right. Okay. We can't give out panel dates, but they are meeting. They are meeting monthly at the moment because of the turnaround time. Then it needs to be spent by the end of October, beginning of November. So they are meeting monthly. So it's a rolling programme. So depending on when you apply and when we get a chance to assess it, it might be that you're here quite quickly. You applied a week before, or our turnaround time now is 8 weeks, but it'll be less than that for this programme because they're meeting monthly at the moment. So you can apply at any time, but depending on when you apply, it can be really quick, or you might have just missed a panel and wait a month.
I know you said this money has to be spent by the end of November. Does this particular programme close in, I don't know, September or something like that, so that we need to know by?
There's no date for it to close at the moment, but it is something that would be kept an eye on based on available funds. So if the funds are reducing, then we would have to close. It's not fair for people to apply when the money's more or less spent.
So we won't be allocating money across panels. We will just be dealing. What they want us to do is deal with applications as they come into us.
The sooner the better, really, then, isn't it, in terms of applications? Yeah.
Because this is quite small, and you've got some other quite small ones. So we were thinking of, because we want some more equipment for the children's equipment, is, for some of your other small grants. So is it okay to put in some kind of, if I say duplicate, that might sound unfair, but some matching applications to you for a small bit from here and a small bit from here, but they're for the same thing? Is that an okay process with this? They don't mind it being a bit of something that you're asking for, a bit of something from somebody else?
No, that's one of the things I would say, that if your total project cost, so your total equipment's going to cost, say, £5,000, you're asking for 2021 from Made by Sport, and the rest from one of our other programmes or another grant funder, for example. It's important in your application to evidence that, because they'll want to see has the remaining project cost or the remaining equipment cost been secured already, or if not, how are you going to secure that? So people say we've applied to Awards for All, we're awaiting an outcome, or we've already been awarded that money. So that they, again, because if they're going to fund something, if they give you £2,021 and the total's £5,000, if you can't secure the rest of that, what happens? With our 2021, it can't be spent on the equipment. So,
what you don't want to do is, sorry, is that feedback from someone, or is that me? What you don't want to do is to be sort of cutting yourself off. So if you say the two are interdependent, say, and you don't get one of them, that would mean you might not get the other one. So even if it's a bigger project, it's good if you can sort of cut it down so each can still go ahead without the other, but one enhances the other. Do you see what I mean? If you do it in that way. Otherwise, if you say this can only go ahead if I secure money from Made by Sport, and you don't, that means we wouldn't be able to give you the other funds. you know, even if it's a good project, because it can't go ahead. So just think about how you can do that, how you can have these two separate projects that will work together, but also maybe can go ahead separately.
So in thinking about your equipment, Jan, you know, if that's, I say £5,000 just because it's a sweeping statement, but within that £5,000, is there a particular piece of equipment that would be about 2,000? You just apply just for that bit, you know, and apply for it, because we need all of this equipment, but specifically we only, the £2,021 that you're providing, hopefully awarding us, will be specifically spent on this piece of equipment, so they can see, even if you don't get the other money you might have applied for, we're going to fund a new boat. What you do, I know it won't fund a new boat, but you put that kind of so like Lee said, try and break it down into a project or
no, we were donated, well, technically we weren't donated, we were able to buy at a very, very, very low cost some access boats for which you use for people with disabilities, but because they're quite old, they need lots of re-rigging and, you know, some new sails and some new rope and things like that, which is quite cheap, you know, compared to buying a new boat. But being able to find that money isn't easy, but that would sit alongside something different. Okay.
Yeah, so we just want ropes and
money for old rope.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's quite a bit more information.
Yeah, that is one of the advantages of this programme, in that they are open about how you spend the money, you know, whereas it will be the opposite for some of our other programmes. They'll be quite prescriptive about what you can spend it on, but you know, perhaps the questions will be less, you know, so it'll be easy to apply for, but there'll be restrictions around the spend. So think about that as well if you're going to apply to two funds. Yeah, if this is almost a dead cert for this, let's get that one. Yeah.
Okay. Gracie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. So I'm speaking on behalf of a horse riding school owner because she can't be here today.
Okay.
So nothing's set in stone at the moment, but what she would like to do in the future is branch out from the riding school thing, so giving lessons, and start like equine well-being, so using our horses to provide well-being to people who may come from like the foster care system, or just to up their mental health. And I was wondering, would this program apply to that? If so, the grant we will get would only be spent on that and not into like the business, because it is a business, but we would like to branch out, just like to do this well-being thing.
Okay. Again, I think that would have to be a question for Made by Sport, because I don't see that as being physical activity or sport really. If they're riding the horses, then that's the physical.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to actually ride the horses because of the health and safety concerns.
So
because
horses, more about
yes, we do have like calm and very well behaved horses. They're also quite unpredictable, but just being around horses, I know myself, very big mental health benefit from being around horses for about 5 years. It's upped my mental health a lot. So just doing that for other people.
Yeah, my gut feeling would be that it wouldn't be, because they're not actually engaging in the sport, although they're interacting with the horses for their well-being and learning about looking after horses and all of that. Yes, that is absolutely a benefit. But because of the nature of the criteria for this fund, I wouldn't think that it would meet it. I'd suggest that you had a look at our website. Have a look at the fact sheets. You know, all of our funds have got fact sheets.
I didn't want to ask until I'd fully seen everything, because nothing's set in stone yet.
No, yeah.
But do you know any other people we could speak to? Because we do have some foster parents who they pay for riding lessons, but they claim that back from, I'm not sure, from social services or something. So is there anyone else we could get in touch with who could just help us with this?
In terms of an application?
I think just in terms of like just helping set it up and getting like a grant or something. I'm not very well versed on this.
No. What area are you from?
It's around like South Birmingham. Worcester, around that part. Right.
In terms of like infrastructure support, Liz, who would you But Birmingham Community Matters help give some advice around that sort of.
It is Birmingham, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Birmingham Community Matters, because some areas have got what's termed as an infrastructure organisation, like Phoebe. You know, I'm not putting you on the spot, Phoebe, but I know you're from Carver, and so that's what Carver do, isn't it? But Birmingham, yeah, it'd be Birmingham Community Matters can give some advice around the kind of questions that you've got, really, how to set up a new project and who to apply, who to contact around funding, that sort of thing. So I would suggest that if you Google Birmingham Community Matters, you should be able to get their details from the website.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? No? Right, okay. Liz, did you want to carry on, have a look at the top tips, maybe? Have we got time to have a look at the...
We've got about 15
Come on,
minutes.
procurement.
So, do any of you think that you might be applying to this fund, or have already looked at this fund?
I think we will if we get the
Some income,
income.
Yeah. I think, as we said before, it is very different for us. We're not used to
Can I just add,
such
can
a
I
firm
just add a couple of comments?
There we go. Right. I think I'd prefer to go to the website and just have a very quick look through our website so we can show you the resources that we've got on there. Where is it? There's the one. Some of you might already have looked at this, but when everybody goes to the website, the first thing they do is they want to go and look at the available grants that we've got. And we always say in these things, please don't do that. Before you do that, go to this section here, the essential information. And a lot of the stuff in here, we've actually been through, but this gives you, it's like the FAQs that people have, the frequently asked questions that we get, and there's some of the stuff that we have been through, but it tells you what type of organisations can apply. Somebody mentioned setting up a community interest company. Can they apply? Can schools apply? National organisations? So there's like 20 questions here that are really, really helpful to you. So look at that, and then we have this section here, support for applicants, and there's some little gems of information when it actually loads in here as well. Something on completing the application form, frequently asked questions, jargon buster, because we all love to use our jargon, and we use it so often that we don't even know that it's jargon anymore. And this is my particular favourite in here. What makes a good application? This was written by a couple of grant officers, really experienced staff, and it just tells you, it's some, what would you want to know if you're a funder? Well, you want to know what you're doing, when you're doing it, where you're doing it, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. And that is a really good guide when you look at any application form for any funder. That's going to be the core of what they want to know. They point out that you're a funder, you're reading a lot of applications in a short space of time. So you need to have clear and concise information. And this is so true. We, last year, Lou, how many applications did we get through over the course of the pandemic?
Well, I think there was 1,500 awarded, but so probably 500 more than that, maybe about 2,000 in terms of received. It's a lot.
Absolutely, a lot of applications, and there are 2 and a bit of us. So we don't get time. We get through a lot of applications just in a day. We haven't got hours and hours and hours to read them. So it's really, really important that what you write is understandable. And we don't want people to think that they've got to use lots of stats or lots of buzzwords or whatever to impress us. We're not interested in that. We just want to hear why you do what you do, and how you make a difference in the community. And there's nothing that speaks to us, we touched on this earlier, quite like the voices of your users. You're asked to put a case study into this. It's so helpful to have something, because that just illustrates, you know, the totality of what you do for us. If you can have 1 or 2 examples of people that you've helped. And that's what we're interested in. We think that you're the experts in what you do, and we just want you to tell us about it in a really simple, straightforward way.
So just say, Liz, I think that's important that we do think that you're the experts, and from previous experience when I used to work with groups, they talk to me about what they're going to do, and because they are experts and because they are passionate about their project and the work they do and the difference they make to people, brilliant, but they'll talk with sort of internal language and assume that we understand that. So like Lisa said, you know, there might be really important piece of work that you do has got a really fancy title, but if we don't understand what that title means, we don't understand what the project's about, really. So sometimes when you're filling in the application, it's important to state the obvious, because as Liz says, we assess a lot of applications. I've been assessing the Made by Sports application since the launch. By my own admittance, I'm not a very sporty person, so people are using sporty language that I don't understand. You know, I've Googled something. I've learned quite a lot about sports since I've been assessing these. So it's important that you're writing it so other people will understand. And I know, Liz, I'm sure you'll agree that we've, you know, had people saying, a friend to read who knows nothing about your project, and if they understand it, that's a good basis, because you understand it because you've written it and your passion's there, and but for anybody else, they might not understand it because it's too complicated or the language isn't clear to somebody like myself or Liz, who don't deal with that kind of work every day. So
we say you need to be a friend. You need to have somebody who's outside of your organisation. Ask them to read it, and if they say, "Oh yeah, I know what you're doing," that's absolutely fine. And if they don't, then you know you've still got to do a bit of work on it. Okay, other bits in here very, very quickly. It says we look to see if we can work out what your place in the community is, how you know about the people that you're trying to help, how you know that you're making a difference to them. How do you measure this? This can be quite straightforward. It can be like just asking them when they first come to you how they're feeling, and then asking them at the end, like I say, doing sort of videos, taking photos of activities, all sorts of ways. And I just wanted to show you that. That's really a nice little resource. And then finally, in the last 10 minutes, let's go on to our available grants. I want to show you how this page is structured. It's really important. Oh, first of all, if we go up to the top here, I mentioned earlier that we're launching new programs all of the time. So the first thing that you can do is click to sign up to our newsletter, and then anytime there's something new launched, you'll be the first to get information about it. Right. And apply. So the way we structure it is we have all of our open programs. They're all thumbnails on here. And as you can see, as I'm scrolling down, there are quite a lot of them. We've tried to structure them on the page, so we've got them geographically. But the thumbnail for everyone, if we just look at Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire Fund, it tells you the area it covers and then the maximum grant that's available. And if you look down, that's the same for all of them. Birmingham Sports Fund, Birmingham, £1,000, Edgbaston and Northfield Fund, for Edgbaston and Northfield, all of that, Wesleyan Foundation. Now,
yes, could you just click on the Made by Sport one, just so.
Where is it? Let me find it.
Further down under the regional. Up.
Oh, hold on. There it is. There we go.
See if that opens.
Yeah, just give it a second.
Yeah, just quickly, when I was saying earlier that to find the fact sheet, it's essential to read the fun fact sheet in pink underneath. So once you click that fun fact sheet, it will take you to the document that we've just looked at. Essential information, as Liz has just shown, read that as well. If you've got any queries about your policies, that's where you might find some information. Well, you will find some information about what's expected with your safeguarding and equal opportunities policy. And there's some examples there of how different projects have addressed the outcomes of the fund. Gives you an idea of the kind of things that they're looking for under each of those different headings, really.
Yeah, there's some really good examples there.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. But that's all of our funding. And then when you go into, as we said, the fund fact sheet, let's go. That's when you get detail on it. And that's where you get really important detail. Like, as Lou said, 50% of the applications, as soon as she gets them, she's having to reject them because they don't meet the basic eligibility criteria. And that isn't just the case for this fund. It's high for this fund, to be fair, but I've worked on other funds, other programs that are running at the moment, and I have exactly the same situation where there's something in there about, it could be an income level, it could be the amount you can apply for in relation to your income level. You know, you can't apply for more than 20% of your income, something like that. It could be that you're asking for an item which it says in the fund fact sheet they will not fund, but as Lou said earlier on, people, we know how much effort people put into writing these applications. We have both, Lou and I have both written many applications to funders ourselves. And it's quite crushing, if I'm honest, when I look at it and I realise I'm not going to be able to take it any further. It's such, you know, there is so little time to make for funding applications now. It's harder than it's ever been. And so please, it's a real plea from us. Read the fund fact sheet. Make sure you know all of the little rules that apply to this fund particularly, as well as all of the big rules that apply to all of our funds.
And if you read it and you've got any queries, you can drop us an email or a question. You know, we can give you a call to on particular questions. Liz and I and the grants team in general spend a lot of time on the fund fact sheets. Not necessarily this one. We didn't have that much input into that one. But most of our fund fact sheets, we do work hard to make sure they're as clear as they can be, because we know the work that you guys put into applying, that we don't want you to apply if you are not eligible for the particular fund. You know, it saves you an awful lot of time, saves us time, you know, in terms of having to read it and reject it. Like this, it's quite crushing to get a reject email. So we don't like sending them. So we want people to apply for funds that they are eligible to apply for. So yeah, read the fund fact sheet.
And we've said a few times, contact us if you need to. And if you just go up here, you can see on the website, this is our normal sort of, info line. Just trying to highlight it. Let's go backwards. Info at Heart of England, cf.co.uk. It's right there on the mast on the website. So what we can't do is, as I said, we can't help you develop your application, because if we're going to assess it, that's a conflict of interest. But what we can do is try and help you get through what might seem like a bit of a maze, a bit of a forest, before you get to the grass and the sun on the other side. We can help you try and work your way through that. And that's a really satisfying part of our jobs for us. So do, if you're not quite sure, if you're ready to apply for funding at the moment, if you've got everything you should need, or which particular programs might be the best for what you're thinking about, then get in touch with us. I must admit, the first thing, if somebody says to me, can you fund this project? I'm thinking of this program. The first thing I always say back is, how do you fit the criteria? So always remember, it's not about what you want to do, it's about the funders' criteria and fitting the funders' criteria. That's the way you've got to look at it. And if you're writing an application with that in your head, then you stand a good chance of writing a better application, because you're more focused on what they want to see.
It's like your example, Gracie, of the work with horses to improve people's mental health.
Yeah.
In essence, that's a good project. You know, it's going to make a difference to people, but it doesn't mean that any of our funders, my feeling is that they will, but there are other questions that they will ask as well. You know, we can't give advice just based on that. So have a good look at the different programs, because there might be an element of it that you're not eligible for, because they don't fund specific things. But
yeah,
but in essence, that is a good piece of work, and we would like to think that somebody will fund it, but it might not necessarily be any of our programs once you've had a good look at the fact sheet.
Or what you probably find is that the emphasis would be on the positive mental health aspect. So when you're writing the application, the important thing would be, how much is this going to improve people's mental health? How do you know that that's what's going to happen? How will you prove to us at the end of the project that that's what's done? So it isn't it is about horses and working with horses, but it's the project focus, the criteria will be around mental health. I think that's probably, we're almost bang on time then. So does anybody have any more questions they'd like to ask?
Hi, could I just make a couple of points, please?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Manoj from Warwick District Council. Thanks for the presentation. Useful to know. Basically, we work with lots of sports clubs, groups and organisations, so we occasionally may send your information out so that we're raising the profile of the sort of different grant funds and pots that are out there. So we've been sending, for example, we've sent stuff out about this grant, so because it might be something that clubs might want to think about applying to. So obviously we wouldn't apply direct, but we'd help raise the profile. I'm just thinking that if a club or group or organisation applied to this fund, because it's sport related, if they're unsuccessful, is there a way that they're looped back into other funders? So I'm just thinking that if someone applied and wasn't successful, we have sports grants as well through the district council. I know Carver potentially can provide funding advice and support and guidance. So just thinking that if someone's made an application, if they've been unsuccessful, does it stop there, or can there be a process of trying to redirect them to other organisations?
That wouldn't be possible for us at the moment under many of our programs because of GDPR. I think we do send out information to people if they haven't been successful, but we couldn't pass on their details to anybody else.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm thinking in terms of, do they get any guidance on where else they could go as an organisation without passing their specifics?
Well, the problem is we could. It's really, we are a very, very small organisation. So, and we deal with, the West Midlands and Warwickshire. So we're not talking about one point of access. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds and different ones for each programme, depending on what the particular
I understand that
fund is. So it sounds as if it's something that we do try and do, but unfortunately things also change really quickly. So it means that you've got to be, Phoebe, I'm sure that it's an ongoing nightmare for you, trying to keep up to date with who's doing what. I mean, I get about 20 emails a week from different funders telling me what funds are available at the moment. So it's not something that's practical for us to do. That's why what we have to try and do is rely on this sort of outlet for
networking. Yeah, no, thanks for that. I appreciate it's a big task, but just thought that if there were applicants that were coming in, for example, from Warwick districts who weren't successful, if there's a process of making them aware. But obviously we're promoting
that. Our bulletins out, I'm sure that if you were to get in touch with our comms team, and if there's something that you wanted to publicise, we can send it out. I would imagine, I should never speak for the comms team, but I'd imagine that would be a conduit, so if you were able to send stuff to us and say, could you publicise this, then it's something that could be considered for that.
Yeah,
so
one of the things, sorry, carry on.
Is that something, that just goes out into your newsletter? Is that something that we'd emailed? And what's the address that I need to email that to, please? Where would I?
If you just go through the normal info line.
Okay.
Yeah. And just say, is it possible for you to send this out with your next bulletin?
One of the things I was going to say is it's hard to signpost people to funding, like Liz says, because of our not only our patch, it's knowing, being up to date on when funds close, etc., etc.
Yeah.
We do try, particularly if an applicant has applied several times and been rejected, and that might be because their application just isn't strong enough. They're not selling themselves particularly well. We will suggest that they speak to Warwickshire Carver, for example, or Carver in Solihull, or some of the other infrastructure organisations in the Black Country for a bit of advice, and then resubmit an application once they've had some support. And also with policies and procedures and things, I tend to, if it's not, as Lee said, it's not always the reject is because of the policy. It might be another reason, but the policy didn't help. That if their policy needs to be reviewed, that I'll signpost them, but put a link to our essential information as some advice, or again speak to Carver if I know. We don't know, they do change, but if we've got relationships with people, we'll signpost them that way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll send you some stuff on our grants so that if you're happy to sort of raise the profile, we're pushing that out widely anyway, but I'm just thinking of the different avenues for applicants to potentially go to for funding. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely have a chat with Fiona as well, who is the Funding and Group Development Officer for Warwick District as well.
Okay. Yeah. I tend to, because if I know the sort of area, I'll try and put a link for that region, you know, just from your website. I'll put the actual Nuneaton or, you know, Warwick District or Rugby.
Yeah, we've sent some stuff through this week to Carver for the Grapevine newsletter, so yeah, thanks for that.
We also do locality bulletins as well that have just picked up again in Warwick District, I know.
Yeah.
So we just go out to our newsletter subscribers for that area, so it'd be sort of a hyper relevant push as well, that Fee will be able to include that information in, as well as the Grapevine if you contact her. That's my Carver 2 cents on it.
Okay then, so it's 11:33, so we're just out of time. So thank you all of you for attending today. I hope that you found it useful, and I hope that if I don't see you applying to this fund, then I might see you applying to some of our other funds in the future. And very good luck.
Thank you so much.
That's okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. See you
Bye.
soon.
All right. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.